With the adoption of the European Green Deal in 2020, the EU set a goal of achieving climate neutrality by 2050. Serbia's prospective lithium production is perfectly aligned with the EU's need for critical minerals from alternative and nearby sources. On one side, we have economic benefits of lithium mining, including job creation, investment attraction, and regional development, while, on the other, the risk of neglecting the standards of the rule of law and respect for human rights, and the risks of environmental impact of lithium extraction and processing. Can Serbia align its mining operation with the EU environmental standards? These are some of the questions for our next speakers. Jelica Minić, member of the Executive Board of the European Movement in Serbia. Julian Popov, former Minister of the Environment of Bulgaria and Senior Fellow of the European Climate Foundation. This panel is moderated by Michael Martens, Frankfurter Allgemeine Zeitung, correspondent for Southeast Europe.
So the clock is not running yet. Can we start anyhow? Or okay, we start. So good evening. This is now really the hardcore of the participants who are still here for the last panel. The good thing, it is the last panel, so we are not under time pressure and have a lot of opportunity to discuss the issue in the next 3.5 hours, or maybe a little faster. The role of Serbia in the European Green Deal. I've heard that the participants have already been introduced. I just want to add something. Jelica, Minić and I know each other for about 20 years, I think, because for many, many years we were participating in a conference organized by the Friedrich Ebert Foundation every year next to Munich in the Protestant Academy of Tutzing in Germany, where a group of people came together to discuss off the record Balkan issues in the Western Balkans. Unfortunately, the format doesn't exist anymore. I do not remember whether we ever discussed energy in this format, but it's a good opportunity to do that tonight because Jelica is an expert on those kinds of issues. And we have Julian Popov, but he has already been introduced. And he was, if I'm not mistaken, candidate of Bulgaria for European Commissioner, if I'm not wrong, but with the wrong chromosome, so to speak. So let us start, Jelica, with your opinion. And I spent already 4 days in Belgrade here to learn more about the debate about the lithium issue, which of course is at the core of the debate here for Serbia, and to learn what the different actors and sides are saying. And I would like to begin with a very simple summarizing question, in which I basically summarize the talks and interviews I had in the last days. Do you think Serbia should strive for becoming a country in which lithium is mined, as the government wants it, or should it, on the contrary, strive to become a country where the mining of lithium will be banned, will be made illegal by law, as the opposition or parts of the opposition demands it? Or is there maybe a third solution, a third way out of the dilemma and out of the conflict?
Well, I would be very clear. I don't think that we should strive to keep the lithium project in Serbia, especially in the form of project which is conceived by Rio Tinto. There are many aspects of this project. What are the economic effects? What are the environmental effects? What are the social effects? What are the political effects? And finally, what are the geopolitical effects? And I'm not an engineer, I'm not geologist, but I can discuss all of these aspects of lithium exploitation in Serbia. I can give some ideas on these issues. I'm very grateful to my colleagues, economists, who made a very good analysis using data on the website of Rio Tinto Serbia. Rio Tinto prepared a study to explain economic benefits of this project in Serbia. Regarding economic effects, they are negligible.
They are what?
Negligible.
Okay.
Sorry, micro. The economic effects are negligible. The environmental effects are disastrous. The social effects are detrimental. The political effects are harming. And finally, geopolitical effects are mixed. So if we make a kind of matrix and analyze the issue, why economic effects are negligible? Comparing to other lithium projects or mining projects abroad that Rio Tinto is practicing, investments of Serbia in this project would be rather high because Serbia has to develop the whole infrastructure that would serve to this mine of lithium.
You mean streets?
Railway, road, electricity connections, gas pipeline.
And in other countries,
supply.
because you compare to other countries, in other countries this was done by Rio Tinto? They were building roads?
Everything was done by Rio Tinto. Not only that, each country where Rio Tinto works has a share. Is a kind of shareholder in the project. We are not. In Serbia, we are not. So comparing to others, it's a very unfavorable situation. The mining rent is very low. It's not clear, are we going to become a part of the value chain or it's only lithium extracted? Because there are some deals with the Slovak company, Inobat, which is not, how to say, they do not have experience in producing huge quantities of batteries. Neither Rio Tinto has experience with the technology of exploiting lithium in such unfavorable, how to say, it's a groundwork. They have to dig. They are going to approach waters under the surface. Serbia is very rich. This is the area where very high resources in clean water are existing underground. They could provide the whole Vojvodina and Belgrade with drinking water. So these are huge reserves, and I believe that water is much more precious resource than lithium on the long term, because the situation with clean water in the world is very bad. In Europe, only 35% of groundwaters are clean. So the quantity of water is decreasing. Then we have trade where Serbia won't have any impact on trade with lithium because Rio Tinto is the owner.
Well, sorry, can I just interject here? I mean, the government says, I'm not saying this
Yes.
is true, but that's what they say, is we will insist that Serbia is part of the value chain, and if it's not, we will not allow the project. I'm not saying you should believe that, but this is the official line, that there should be a better factory, that there should be other factories that are involved in the production, and they say if this is not assured, then it's not going to happen.
Well, Innobat could be used as an argument that we are going to have processing, but we don't know how much, what are we going to be a recycling company, because Chinese are now, they made agreement with Slovakia to develop huge battery factory in Slovakia with Chinese know-how. So are they going to duplicate the capacities in Serbia, or we are going to make just recycling? We don't know. If it will be only Innobat, then it's a question. Because pure revenues from mining of lithium is very low. It's about 500 million euros for 40 years. It's nothing. And the profit, net profit of Rio Tinto will be more than 11 billions from this project. So transfer of technology for mining, it will be, it's an innovative project, new project in new circumstances. It's different than from exploiting lithium from some lakes, some waters like in Germany. No, it's a different project which is more harmful even. And then finally, prices of lithium carbonate are falling down. For 2 years, they fell 80%. There is growing number of new locations very rich with lithium. Now in Arkansas, the reserves of lithium that were discovered could cover a global demand. This is what I found in different papers. And then there are alternatives to lithium, sodium-ion batteries, hydrogen fuel cells, then magnesium batteries, graphene batteries. And we don't know in 40 years how fast these batteries are going to substitute lithium, because lithium is the worst option considering especially environment.
Well, as you say, we don't know, so why don't we speak about things that we do know, or that we at least might anticipate. We talk now a lot about technical issues, about ecology, about, you mentioned the geopolitical aspect, and this is something I'd like to ask you a question about, or the political domestically in Serbia and the wider political aspect. The image of the European Union and Germany, I would say, in this country, because of the project, is as an all-time low. I have never seen it in such a way. I mean, German-Serbian relationship and European-Serbian relationship have never been easy, or have very often not been easy, but this is really a new low. And Germany is now heavily investing in a public relations campaign. In a couple of days, a group of Serbian journalists from Insider, from Birn, from Radar, and opposition politicians from Serbia will be traveling to Germany for an entire week. They're invited by the foreign ministry. They finance everything. And they have I saw the program. It's really an amazing program. The journey is called Germany as an Example of Environmentally and Socially Sustainable Mining. They will meet, and the foreign ministry people, they will meet the parliamentary state secretary Franziska Brandner, who's head of the Green Party right now, who's very much supporting the project. They will meet, that's maybe a name that's not a household name here, but he is important, Eckhard von Kleden. He's head of the Department of Politics and External Relations of Mercedes. That's more or less the foreign minister of Mercedes. And there has also even been the idea of Olaf Scholz and Alexander Vucic traveling together to Zinnwald. This is the place in Germany where they extract lithium, but given the events in Germany, I have my doubts whether this is all happening. Why I'm saying all this, my impression is this does not change much the image. I mean, for the European Union and for Germany, this lithium mining and supporting this project is a public relations disaster here. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
Okay, that's a good answer, but a little short. Could you explain? Could you explain why?
Well,
Microphone, please.
yes, sorry. I can understand European Union. I can understand Germany. I can understand their interests. It's legitimate. But I can't understand Serbian interest in this project. No interest. Serbia, everything, as I said, it has a bad qualification except geopolitical. Only geopolitical could have some positive effects, because if this project would be operational, active, successful in terms of implementation, pure implementation, not economic effects, it could send a message that Serbia is finally in the Western camp. It would give some leverage to Serbia to negotiate with the European Union in the accession process, and that's all. Everything else is bad.
Well, the accession process is something we can maybe touch later, because I don't think there is such a process, but we can discuss this and then see whether lithium mining has an influence on a non-existing
And you
process.
asked about political effects.
Yes?
This project strengthens autocratic regime in Serbia. This project would be performed and has been up to now developed without respect of the rule of law. This project is completely centralized in each respect, doesn't respect at all local communities in this area. And finally, this project is confronting different interest groups in Serbia. So I can't, I try to give some positive political or social effects, but I couldn't find them.
Okay, thank you for this first round. Now let's move on to Julian Popov. I found a quote by you, it must be rather recent, that I would like to ask you about. You said, and I quote, "In these difficult geopolitical times, the European Union needs a strong commission to fight for a fair and competitive Europe, opposing external interference and Russian hybrid war, supporting Ukraine until its final victory, and defending European values, freedoms, and quality of life." End of the quote. I hope it's really from you. That's you sometimes have to be distrustful in the internet, but that's, I think, what you said. And I think this brings us on a more general level to the question we have just been discussing. How does, in your opinion, the fight for access to raw materials like lithium, but only as an example, fit into the equation here for a fair and competitive Europe, which keeps the quality of life for its citizens?
Oh, that's a very complicated question. Well, the raw materials was identified as a critical issue, critical raw materials specifically, and strategic raw materials. They were identified by European Commission, by European governments at a later stage. So it wasn't, I don't know, 20 years ago, for instance. And when the identification of this problem came, it was identification in a state of panic. So suddenly we're losing something. And there are things that take time, a long time. And mining is one of them. You can't develop mining just overnight. And you're absolutely right when you say that the whole thing with lithium in Serbia is a public relations disaster. It's absolute disaster, and it's not the only disaster in such cases, because there are issues, regulations that could be
decided behind closed doors or without public consultations, or even when you have public consultation on something, on important issues, very often public is not engaged. But mining is a textbook example of not being that. You have to have a very, very solid information inclusion, especially when it comes to damage to the environment or to concerns about environment, even if it's not damaged. And we see that every time in any democratic or semi-democratic country, or any country, even in place like China, you can have, when there is a very extreme harm on environment, there is a public reaction. I mean, China transformed its energy sector very much because of a reaction against air pollution. So because of fear of public reaction, and public reaction started to boil. So it doesn't matter in what regime you are, what level of democratic practices you have in the country. This is a very, very sensitive issue. And you're absolutely right about the public relations disaster. At the same time, we have to recognize that the critical raw materials are very important for the independence, for the autonomy, strategic autonomy of the European Union. But the question is much wider because, as we heard, lithium, there are new technologies that are coming. There are many critical materials that we have to look at. And also, it's very important in cases like this to look at the whole value chain, the whole supply chain, and how we play on European level this whole game. I don't think our option is to mine everything and produce everything and become kind of a closed continent. We have to manage the global supply chain in such a way that we have a security of supply, and if something happened, like it happened with Russia, for instance, we have alternatives that we can trigger immediately. So I don't, that's something that is now becoming kind of more articulated issue on European level, but it hasn't synced in sufficiently. And because the panel was announced as the role of the Green Deal, just one sentence to say that, I mean, the Green Deal is a very, very important industrial and economic and policy of the European Union, and the critical raw materials is kind of a very important but very small part of it.
Can I ask you, Bulgaria is member of the European Union since 2007, so for more than 15 years. One of the problems here in Serbia is that there is no trust by a large part of the society in the government, in whatever it promises. For good reasons, we all know what happened in Novi Sad a while ago. How is this in Bulgaria? I mean, has the fact that you are a member of the European Union changed the way that citizens can participate and do participate in those large projects, or is this not really happening?
Yes, of course. I mean, the European Union is a kind of a regulatory land. I mean, it's about regulations, and regulations that we love. We always talk against regulations, but in fact, we love regulations. And because of these regulations, because of pressure from the European Union, because of conditions on not sufficient conditions of all the funding that Bulgaria, as a member of the European Union, receives from the European Union, many processes have to be much more open, and this openness is very often forced. Then the other thing is, and that's very important, that the main trading partners of Bulgaria are, let's say, good countries. Germany, the European Union. So and many of the investors, so main investors in mining in Bulgaria, are German companies, and they behave very well. And I mean, there are quite a lot of tensions around what they do. But when you have a company that is doing everything according to the book, then you have much fewer problems.
So is there a lot of participation? I mean, in Bulgaria, one of the biggest issues as far as energy policy is concerned, correct me if I'm wrong, is the nuclear power plant not Belene, in Kozloduy. And the question of should it be enlarged, should there be an extra block? Is there a public debate about these kinds of issues? Do people say yes, no, or we have alternatives, or?
No, there isn't a debate, and unfortunately for me, because my views are slightly different from what even I was in government, which voted a number of decisions to promote expansion of nuclear. There is a big question mark about nuclear, but that's not discussed. I'm one of the very few people who discuss the economy of nuclear, because I'm a supporter of nuclear, but the economy of nuclear is extremely uncertain, because just in 10 years, the energy markets, the energy technologies, the energy landscapes globally, and especially in Europe, have turned upside down completely. We have a completely new economy and technological landscape. So if an engineer with 30 or 40 years experience hasn't unlearned what he knows and learn what he doesn't know, and I say he because usually these are men who are fighting very hard about that, this very experienced engineers become very irrelevant for the debate because there are new realities that are coming. And if you start building nuclear now, you take a significant risk that you will build a massive capacity that will land in a market that you have absolutely no idea what it will be. So that, in my view, is the main risk. But that's not seriously discussed in Bulgaria, because Bulgaria is a nuclear country, and it's a wide public support for nuclear, and that's the result.
But of course, this unpredictability that you were talking about is true for any investment in energy then, be it lithium, be it nuclear, be it whatever.
Any investment in energy, well, we can make relatively educated guesses about what is more certain and what is less certain. I mean, we have a target, net zero 2050. Anybody who disregards this target suffers massively. So if somebody decides to invest in coal or in gas at the moment, will fail. Purely will bankrupt, or will build, if it's a government, will build stranded assets, because gas will follow exactly the same fate as coal in, let's say, 10 years, maybe even shorter time. So there is, that's not an activist statement. It's sort of it's data. I can show you data. And there is, very often I hear when we talk about gas, that gas is a transitional fuel. I mean, gas is not a transitional fuel, and that's data. It's not my wish as some kind of a climate-involved person that, oh, we don't want gas because it's a fossil fuel. It's data. When you see the data for any country that has made transition to renewable energy away from coal, you see that it is not replaced by gas. There are very few examples, very rapid transition, or Fukushima case, or the gas revolution in America, which changes a little bit that trend. But otherwise, the trend is coal is replaced by renewables and energy efficiency. That's the reality. So we have this certainty, and part of this certainty comes from new technologies. Part of this certainty comes from a very clear target that Europe, and not only Europe, I mean the whole world sets targets for net zero. But Europe has target for net zero 2050. US, South Korea, Japan have target for 2050. China has a target for 2060. So this is the direction of travel. Anybody who doesn't put this in the business plan will have a problem.
I'd like to add one question, because you mentioned yourself you were a member of the Bulgarian government, so you know both sides. You are and were an academician, so I suppose you are publishing essays in scientific quarterlies, and you sit on panels like this one. But then you know the other side, the politics where you have to take decisions, defend those decisions in public. Did you experience in your time, rather short time, I understand, as a minister, this phenomenon when it comes to energy transition that I think in English is called NIMBY, the acronym for not in my backyard? People saying, yes, we want, I mean, in Germany it's very common. They basically, in theory, everyone agrees to green transition, but when it's coming, when we talk about putting up wind turbines, they say, okay, but not in our village, do it somewhere else. Is this a phenomenon that you have encountered as a minister?
Absolutely, and there are a number of cases. One thing, I'm sure it will happen here, because you're at the beginning of a sudden massive expansion of solar. I mean, in 3 years, you will see everything covered. And many environmentalists, environmental protection people, who are supposed to support renewable energy, suddenly said, oh, you're destroying agricultural land. You're destroying the landscape. And they start turning against solar. And this is a general case. Very interesting case, another case, which is at the kind of territory of madness. There was a plan for quite a large wind park in north east of Bulgaria. And northeast of Bulgaria is kind of a cursed land. I mean, all nationalists, all sort of crazy people of fantasies, they come for some reason from Varna and around that. And there was a project, very advanced, and suddenly the whole community started massively opposing that. They imported some English, and specifically some English lady, I think, who said that she's a farmer and she had cows, and these cows suffered from cancer because they built wind power plants. And the project was killed. I mean, when you face this kind of a local madness, like in some kind of, I don't know, Marcus world or something else, then it's very difficult to deal with. And this is a lesson that even if you promote something very, very sensible and very good and obviously positive, you have to build your public communication, and not just communication, engagement very well. Another problem is that we have a report in the ministry from 2012, I think, and also public perception that we shouldn't build wind power on agricultural land. It's exactly the opposite. You should build wind power on agricultural land.
Why?
Because it has a very small footprint. It's more or less like this room. It's 0.001% of the agricultural land if you want to satisfy all the energy needs of the country. And if you do something that the Germans did, they did cooperatives with local farmers, you secure to the farmers steady fixed income. And farming is a bit unpredictable business. So you might have very bad harvest. If you build wind power, not solar, even with solar, solar is a bit more specific, especially agri-solar. But if you build wind power on agricultural land, you don't lose anything, but you can secure steady income, basic income for the farmers. And that's a good thing, I think.
Which means, if I understand you correct, the lesson, because you said some of the projects failed, the lesson is A, early engagement with the local community, and B, financial participation of the local community.
Yes, it's not only about communication. It's about, there was a famous Harvard article some years ago about shared value. So it became very famous. You have to create shared value. You have to not just engage, you have to involve, and you have to share. So if a company comes in the country and says, I want to build something big, something polluting, but it's not polluting, we'll do it the way it should be, you have to share the value that you create with local communities. But not by building a sports center, which is another kind of dodgy story very often, but somehow share the revenues, share in a fair way. I mean, share the revenues, share education, share research, infrastructure, and so on, so that citizens buy in the whole project. And this is communication. It's transparency, but it's also actual involvement.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Let's maybe move back to Serbia. I would like to ask another political question. Now, after having spent here a couple of days and after talking to different actors, my impression is that even Aleksandar Vučić will not be able to pull this off because there's just such a broad and very heterogeneous coalition of people who were against it, from the left, from the right, nationalists, pro-Europeans, whatever, that I don't see, even if you control most of the media, even if you do have other ways to influence public opinion, I just don't see how this is going to go. What's your gut feeling? I mean, can this actually happen, or are we talking about a pipe dream that's not going to become reality anyhow?
Well, we know that...
Please, microphone.
We know that there are many of his voters who are against...
That's what I mean, yeah.
Yes.
It's a very broad coalition.
Yes.
And what happened in Novi Sad, for sure, hasn't helped the process of trusting the state.
Yes, and there is also, how to say, a game that people who are against lithium, they are accused that they are paid by Russians, that they are Russian agents. This is the story for embassies of the EU, of United States, etc. Even we who are against lithium are challenged, the word accused, by foreign ambassadors, but in fact we are. They are defending their interests, and it's legitimate, but we have to defend our interests. And probably there will be some point where we can find common language, because I would quote Florian Bieber, who said this lithium project in Serbia is terrible mistake of tragic, he used the word tragic mistake of the European Union, because the European Union is sending the message that in fact it doesn't care about people, but it cares for lithium, for minerals, and it's a message for the whole region of the Western Balkans. And another message that came from Austria, it was published in some, I don't know the name, Standard, is there Standard?
Yeah.
Yes. They published an article that the European Union developed its colony in the near neighborhood, its own colony, little colony. And there are more and more negative reactions in the European Union itself regarding this Rio Tinto project. And as I became interested for this project in 21, I collected a huge dossier. Well, this is not difficult. You have internet. You can find whatever you want. And I couldn't find some positive assessment of Rio Tinto activities of this kind regarding all these criteria. Only positive information about Rio Tinto is that they are making huge profits, that they are a very big company, although there is one bigger in the world in this area. So it's very hard to believe that this project could bring some real benefit to our society. And it is not against the EU. I really want Serbia to see Serbia in the EU. But it doesn't mean that we have to accept everything, every request that is coming from the EU. I would take some examples. For example, Polish negotiations on the agriculture with the European Union. I think it was a very difficult stuff for the European Union, but they were defending their interest. We have to learn to defend our own interest without ruining our relations with the European Union or anybody else.
May I ask, I touched this in my very first question, but I would like to try to make it even more clear. Are you of the opinion that the lithium mining is not possible with this company, Rio Tinto, and this government, the Vučić government? Or are you saying it is generally not possible and should never be done in Serbia, no matter what company, no matter what government in Belgrade?
It would be good to see some alternative project with many, many components of the project designed in a different way, and to have more reliable partner, or to have complete ownership, to have a state company developing this project, but having in mind the character of our authorities, it wouldn't help. So, and the conclusion is no, under given conditions, absolutely not. But theoretically, it would be nice to see different offers. But in this country, it's, I think it's, I missed we don't have a competition in whatever public procurement we are making for any project. It's usually one who offers and state accepts. The projects that have been done by the state. Otherwise, individual companies, private companies, they have to tender for any procurement that they are having. But when our state is making a public procurement tenders, it's not transparent, it's not clear, there is only one who is making offer, etc., etc. So under given conditions, no.
Okay, I expected that. I just wanted to clarify that. And before we open to the audience, because, I mean, there are not so many people left, but I have the impression that there might still be a lot of questions, because this is such a disputed topic in Serbia. Allow me to ask one last question from my side to Julian Popov, because in preparation for this moderation and this panel, I went through some of your articles, and I found one which is 10 years old, which you published on the website of BIRN. And in the beginning, I thought initially, no, I cannot come with a 10-year-old article and ask you what you think about it. But then I thought, no, actually, this is what I would like to do, because it might expose or show what has happened in all these 10 years, in this decade, and what has not happened. The article was titled, "Bringing Southeast Europe's Energy Markets Together," published in October 2014, so even more than 10 years ago. No, right, 10 years ago. And 1 month. And you say there that Serbia and Albania should play the leading role in assisting the transformation and integration of the region's energy market. You are saying that regional integration of energy systems offers huge opportunities. One of the important ingredients of a resilient energy system, you write, is an integrated regional energy infrastructure. And then you name projects that could be beneficial, like a new transmission line between Albania and Kosovo, which was expected to come into operation in 2016. I don't know, is it or not? You talk about further development of hydro capacities in Albania, But mentioning this, we have again the thing of public participations, because there was this case of the, I think, Vjosa River, where people were absolutely against this, maybe with good reasons. And you also mentioned an underwater power cable between Albania and Italy, and multi-energy trading arrangements. If you, I mean, I don't expect you to know by heart what you wrote 10 years ago, but I think generally you would know. How did the region make progress in these 10 years, and which progress, and where there is still room for improvement?
I mean, that I think was a moment when there was some kind of, not very serious, but some tensions between Serbia and Albania. My suggestion was, well, let's focus on the work and let's focus on technical things, and we might overcome the other stuff. But integration of energy system is absolutely essential, and for the energy transition, because and that includes power grids, that includes power markets, electricity markets. There is a little progress. Okay, the cable between Montenegro and Italy is now online. I would advocate, and I was advocating for a couple more, which could create an Adriatic market area, because Italy has very high intermittent renewable capacity, so it needs connection to exchange electricity all the time. Because when you have renewable electricity, you can't close the country, you have to open it. You have to open it in order to trade all the time. And you don't become exporter, you become exporter-importer at the same time. So because of that, you need much more, a higher capacity of electricity grids inside the countries, but also cross-border. And not only Western Balkans, but with the European Union. I would go even further, participation in projects that connect South Europe with North Africa. There are several projects that are on the table. Or another interesting project, I was discussing it in Baku the other day, about a cable across the Black Sea, which connects Caspian Sea with Bulgaria and Romania, which means with the Western Balkans market. So we have to think in this scale, and of course the other thing is very important to speed up the integration of the markets, the so-called coupling of the markets. I don't know why this is so slow, but it must happen. That will make energy trading much more transparent.
You say you don't know why it's so slow.
I do.
Do you take guesses?
I do. But it's an administrative, it's not an easy process to start with. Administrative difficulties, but also trading and company interests with companies that prefer to trade outside the system, which is not exactly illegal, but it doesn't help the overall system. And because the Western Balkans have significant hydro capacity, we don't hear that in German relations, because Germany doesn't have that much hydro, and that's why it's not part of the whole Energiewende discussion. But hydro capacity, both generation and storage, are absolutely essential for the expansion of renewables, because they can balance the renewables, and we can see that very well in Bulgaria, where now we have very often days with over 50% of the energy generation, electricity generation from solar, and then when the solar picks up in the day, we preserve water in our dams, and then when we have little blocks of shortages, then we generate water, hydroelectricity. So the fact that Western Balkans and the Balkans in general, Bulgaria, Romania including, have significant hydro capacity and potential.
But you are aware, of course, of the local resistance of the against hydro projects, which
yes,
I think one failed in Bosnia, another one failed in Albania.
I'm very much aware, yes. But there are a number of things that could be done in hydro without or with very little opposition, converting existing hydropower plants into storage power plants, increasing efficiency with just changing the turbines and modernizing and so on. So there is quite a lot that could be done.
Yeah.
And the management of the different sources, that's very important also.
And sorry, before I open the floor to the audience, I remembered while listening to you one more question which I like to ask you. We enter now in Serbia a phase, in this lithium project, a phase of studies. I understand that Rio Tinto is working on 3 studies, which are supposed to be on impact on the environment, sustainability, this and that. And then there will several NGOs work on different studies. And I do not think you need to be a prophet to already say now that a Rio Tinto study will say you can do it, it's not dangerous, but no one from the other side will believe them, just as, of course, I think you don't need to prophet to say that NGO study, most of them will be against, saying this is a disaster and it's the end of mankind, and all Serbs will be, there will be only Serbs left under one plum tree, as you once put it in an interview with Danas. So we know how the studies will be, and we know that no side will trust the other one. This is, again, for me, if there's zero trust on both sides, there can be no debate anyhow.
There is a group of scientists from the university that published their study in an international review. I forgot the name of the review.
And even the SANU positioned themselves against
it. So it's not civil society, it's serious scientists.
Yeah.
And this article that was published in an international scientific review, Rio Tinto demanded from this review to annulate this article. I don't know how they thought to do that, but they insisted that it shouldn't be. This article was published, and they wanted this article to disappear. So, Academy of Sciences, yes. Then my colleague economists, the group of them, with one very distinguished businessman, they are professors at university. They made an analysis based on the data offered by Rio Tinto. And this analysis is disastrous.
Are there, according to your knowledge, any scientists who argue for the project? I haven't seen it. I just wonder.
Yes, there are individuals. Yes, there are individuals. But there are, may I say a comment on what Mr. Popov said?
Go ahead.
Yeah, it's a different
Go ahead, but let's give the audience also the chance to ask questions. But yeah, comment.
A very short one.
Anything below the level of physical violence is accepted here.
Yes. It is also the question of political will. To make this, how to say, regional electricity grid functioning. The national electricity companies are not against that. And also they have a common standing regarding join our electrical, not companies, but the branch producing electricity, that they join European energy market. That they joined the ETS, the emission trading system, that could give incentives to make the energy production more renewable. Because except Albania or all our electricity production, most of it is based on coal. and produce...
No, it's not. I mean, it's different in different countries.
And producing huge quantities of carbon, so this CBAM, carbon border adjustment mechanism will very soon become a huge burden on our economies. So our electricity companies, with support of the civil society, are very much oriented to solve these issues. They are lobbying, they are campaigning. So hopefully we are going to get Bulgarian support.
I do have additional questions, but I will refrain from asking them because we have like 7.5 or 8 minutes left for questions from your side, and I do see a couple of them. Okay, let's start, because I know your name. Angel Petrov has a question.
I've talked too much on this conference, so really two very quick things to follow up on what I heard. First, just to clarify, to Jelica Minić, do you think, based on everything that we said, because we mentioned trust, lack of trust in Vučić's government, in the Serbian state overall, do you think the dominant reason for the mass rejection of the Rio Tinto project is the Vučić regime, or is lithium per se? Is this more, are we seeing more of an anti-Vučić protest and an extension of everything that we've seen over the past years on every occasion where public discontent was absolutely legitimate? Or we are seeing something ecological? Which do you think is a driving force beneath? I'm asking because you know that, and Michael mentioned it too, maybe one day, I'm paraphrasing, but maybe one day another government, there will be around. Rio Tinto can wait, right? Rio Tinto will return, and it will ask for its stake. It will talk with the government. Let's imagine there is a democratic government with the rule of law very strong, EU integrated, etc. Do you think that Serbia's reaction will be the same or not? And secondly, I mean, judging motivations of a government is maybe a difficult task, but do you think, because we mentioned the enlargement but didn't get there, do you think that the Serbian government believes this project can move Serbia from the merit-based approach, where it's not doing very well, to this new geopolitical track where Ukraine and Moldova and Georgia are of enlargement that everybody's talking about, and maybe fast-track this moribund process that has been mentioned? Sorry.
Do you want me immediately to, okay?
Why don't
Yeah, okay. Well, I could say that both reasons are relevant in this producing this fear regarding exploitation of lithium. Let us have a hypothetical new government. They should take care about something that Mrs. von der Leyen said for the European Union, that competitiveness, security, food security, that these are priorities of the European Union. Exploitation of lithium in a very rich arable land area in Serbia will harm food security in Serbia and water security in Serbia. It's a huge damage. So the new government would have to make new metrics and to put all these elements and to make decision. Probably they would opt for some other way of exploiting lithium with a national company having diversified shareholders, not Rio Tinto. Rio Tinto could be one shareholder. To choose one really experienced company, there are not many of them in the world for such, how to say, geological conditions as are in Jadar Valley. So there are many but, maybe.
Of course, it would now be interesting. originally, I understand that the Serbian Minister for Mining and Energy was invited to sit on the panel. Would be interesting to ask her what she says, but she declined, or I would rather say, taking the realities into account, she was told to decline. So we are here, let's say, in our own bubble. Yeah, I saw 2 more questions. I see even 3. Okay, I think 3 questions we can still do, if you are short and concise. The lady here in the second row.
Thank you. I have a question for Mrs. Jelica Minić. What mechanisms remain available to civil society in Serbia's current political climate, alongside with ongoing repression against young activists, but not only them, to resist misinformation and the strategic distortion of public perception? The necessity of dialogue on this issue is often emphasized, but how can such dialogue be initiated when so many conflicting interests are in the game and a culture of dialogue is non-existent?
Thank you for being very concise. Then the gentleman in the background, and then we have one more here. Let's collect the question, I think, and then you can...
Oh. Thank you. Mirko Popović, Renewables and Environmental Regulatory Institute. I think one question should be delivered to Mr. Popov. So, I will be short. If we have a situation that European Union institutions, particularly European Commission, and countries like Germany, are showing certain readiness to neglect the state of rule of law related to Jadar project and to underestimate the effects on democracy and rule of law, how this approach may impact energy transition of Serbia and the region, because we have also breaching of rule of law in energy transition process. From my part of view, I consider breaching of energy treaty as a breaching of rule of law. So, could these relations, this sensitive political trade-off, could impact the energy transition and decarbonization in a broader sense? Thank you.
Thank you very much. You were one of my sources for my questions, as you know, of course. And one last question here. If you can be as concise as the 2 others, that's great. Then we still have time to answer and will not... yeah, over there.
Hello, everyone. My name is Mudra Kapoor. I'm from No Immunity from Accountability Organization. There are lots of things said here. Unfortunately, I have to be concise. Several disinformation. For instance, mineral rent in Serbia is one of the highest in Europe, not one of the lowest. Mining rent is one of the lowest, especially for NIS Gazprom Neft, which illegally still pays 3% of mining rent. And nobody talks about it in civil society. So again, to repeat, it's one of the highest in Europe. It's not the only thing that Serbia would benefit from this mining. I understand any project in Serbia is problematic, taking into consideration what happened, for instance, in Novi Sad, right? These tragedies. And so, especially with huge mines like Rio Tinto, that may be a problem. But comparing to other mining projects in Serbia, according to the published data so far, it's one of the least dangerous projects. And we have 2 polarized sectors right now, media sectors in Serbia, which do not discuss with each other these issues. Anyone who dares to question this information regarding lithium extraction in Serbia is banned on the so-called opposition media. On the other hand, government refuses to debate in a meaningful conversation with others. So artificially creating divisions, which is a common typical Russian-style propaganda factor. And therefore keeping 2 sectors polarized, not able to reach anything, any agreement in future. And I can say more about, there'll be increase in demand for lithium, that's relevant predictions. There is no alternative lithium battery. There are alternatives, but there is a diversification of different batteries. So lithium will have its place in near and mid-term future in the world. And I mean, I can continue going on, but unfortunately, time is limited.
Thank you very much. Interesting element. I was wondering if you are for the project, would you get airtime at N1 or Nova Rese or whatever? But okay, we can discuss this at different time. Well, how do you want to chop up the questions between the 2 of you? I mean, some were clearly lithium and Serbia related. Maybe if you would like to start.
Yes. It would be our 3rd public debate with Mr. Kapor. Mr. Kapp. Sorry? No, it will debate inevitably. Each time it was, so it will be the third time we are repeating the story. In 40 years, what will happen in 40 years? This is the issue you raised. Changes are so quick. I don't believe that not only Serbia, why Germany didn't start with the production, why Czech Republic, they have twice the reserves of Serbia. The amount of reserves is twice those that we have. Why they didn't start to exploit lithium, and they are exploiting lithium from water, not digging the mines. Second, electrical vehicles. There is no bright future for electrical vehicles, according to what I read quite a lot, because the polluting effect in producing electrical vehicles is more or less the savings to pollute when they are exploited. And the industry of electrical vehicles is not going well, especially in Europe. The price is 4 times higher than electrical vehicles in China. Second, Swedish, huge producer of batteries, these days was close to bankruptcy, and they are going to fire 1,600 workers in Sweden. So these are the signs. I cannot construct of these signs a reliable story, but if you are getting different signs coming from different sides, they are making the picture at least. So I wouldn't rely in lithium production in Serbia. I hope this project won't be realized. Second problem, is the dialogue possible? There is a dialogue of civil society and authorities. It's a national convention on the European Union, covering all 35 chapters, negotiating chapters. And we have, in these national conventions, we have a regular dialogue with different branches of our government. Even parliament is involved. So the dialogue is possible. But the dialogue on lithium, obviously, is not possible. The opposition or pro-lithium forces are so confronted. And in a way, this is a good, how to say, this is exactly how our society functions. Somehow, in the lithium case, we have all problems of our society. Lack of transparency, any relatively important investment is treated by the law, or specially designed law, as investment of high importance where agreements are secret.
Thank you very much. Julian Popov, you were a minister, you know what it means to have power, and you have power now because you can give the closing statement of the closing panel of today's conference day.
Well, thank you for handling me this power, but I mean, first on democracy and transition and the dialogue with Germany, there are two forces here. On one hand, yes, suppressing democratic processes could slow down the transition, the energy transition in many complicated ways, but that could be the negative side. At the same time, we have to recognize that the energy transition now is land of absolutely fierce competition, and this is one thing that we didn't mention, is the Draghi report, which recognizes a European problem of competitiveness. And this competitiveness is very much focused on the new technologies, on batteries, on electric cars. I mean, 20% of all new cars in the world this year sold will be electric. So that's kind of done deal, and the competition is absolutely fierce. And competition is driving now the transition, not so much policies. And just to finish with one kind of positive wish, this whole debate around lithium, I hope that it will trigger a wider debate on environmental issues, because, I mean, we have many, you have many, I mean, Serbia's land is probably the most polluted with pesticides in Europe. I mean, this is everywhere.
Belgrade doesn't have I mean, the water in Belgrade goes directly into the Danube.
Yes,
untreated.
there is no water treatment plant. Belgrade doesn't have water treatment plant. I will not say anything as a Bulgarian that everything comes to Bulgaria, but it's so if such a debate is the air quality, I mean, these are things that it would be good if they become a wider thing, and also they be wrapped up in the issue of climate change, because we are experiencing very seriously the consequence of warming climate.
Blagodarim, hvala mnogo, thank you very much. Let's call it a day. Thank you very much for having been here as the last Mohicans on the last panel. See you tomorrow.